Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail, a show produced through Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I am your host, Dr. Mandy Simon, and I am joined today by Jeanette Bronée, who had the pleasure of meeting early in the pandemic. She specializes in self-care, and I'm so pleased that she can be here today to talk us through some practical tools that can help us continue to build resilience and live without fear in our new world. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Why don't you give our audience at home a little bit of an idea of what you specialize in and sort of how you came to do it very briefly, and then we can focus them on some tools that they can use in 15 or 20 minutes a week to really help them out.
Sure. It's interesting that we're talking about fear because I always felt like I grew up with this sort of like underlying fear. You know, I grew up in Denmark and it's a pretty, quality of life is high and so on and so forth. But for some reason as a child, I always had this little tiny fear. And granted, my life started out with several so-called tries on my life where I almost died at birth and almost got killed in a drowning accident and stuff. So I always understood that there is this sense that things might not work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had this idea of fear in my being. And so it became almost a quest for me to figure out how to live with my fear in a way that the fear didn't run my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I understood the fear from a way that was more constructive. And so when we're talking about resilience and we're talking about living more fearlessly, I think it's about that, like creating that new relationship with our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started working with self-care, which is about 18 years ago, after probably like 15 years in the fashion business and design business where I was burning out, I was running under stress and working under stress and survival mode pretty much, because that's what we do when we're running on stress. I realized this isn't working and it doesn't feel very human to work that way. And as I was starting to work with self-care and helping people take charge of their health, which I thought was just about information.
Sure.
But I realized that information doesn't help us change.
No.
It just helps us know what to do when we change.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's
instead it almost, right. And so instead more information really just gives us another reason to beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
Instead of being informed and then guided by the information to create change, I realized that there is so much in our emotional landscape that holds us back from taking good care of ourselves and practice good self-care. And a lot of it is fear.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you're saying, because the fear and the stress are actually precursors of one another, right? So when we have the fear experience, we then have the stress experience, which leads us to living in survival mode, as you're alluding to.
Yeah.
And this makes us as human beings actually shut down in terms of our creativity and our ability for rational thought. And we simply look at the whole world through blinders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're running on adrenaline. We're running on cortisol. Our anxiety is running our choices, our worry. And I think that we're actually not burning out from working too much. We burn out from worrying too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if we're working a lot and we're having a good time, we're maybe doing what we want to do.
Sure.
But if it's because we're challenged with, we're worrying about, like, especially during COVID now, right? How are we going to take care of kids? How are we going to take care of all these things? What are we going to do during a time of a pandemic? Are we going to be losing our jobs? Like, there's so much to worry about.
Yeah.
And how can we rein that in so it doesn't take over?
Yeah.
And then we end up doing the self-care where we're just numbing that fear, numbing that pain, which is what I realized when people were working under stress in their companies. They're just going home and they're numbing the fear, they're numbing the stress with food and alcohol or TV or shopping or whatever they're doing.
Or whatever it is, right? Because it can change as time goes by. And I think, from my perspective, being in the medical field, one of the things that I recognized very quickly when COVID hit was the fact that we cannot sustain living in survival mode. It's not a sustainable state of physical or mental health. And so what you're talking about is so relevant, because this is no longer where will we be in a couple of months from now. This is how many more years, and it's now, exactly as you're saying. But the truth is that this may be decades. We don't know.
We don't know. And that's actually not something we're very comfortable with as human beings, right? Yeah. It's the not knowing that creates more fear.
Yeah.
And we think of resilience, and I think this is an important piece, and it's been an important piece of my own discovery in my fear, was to acknowledge my fear, use it as information, and then figuring out what I need so that I can, which is part of the tool we're going to be talking about afterwards too, is this idea of like, well, if that's my fear, what do I need so that I can understand the fear from a place of information?
Sure.
But what am I going to do with it? And that's where resilience comes in. I think we misunderstand resilience as, okay, I'm just going to ignore my fear, push it aside, and then it becomes this gnawing, nagging thing underneath it all.
Yeah, and I think what we really need to understand as people is that resilience isn't what we are just alluding to. Resilience is about taking action in your life to create steps each day that can give you a confidence that within you are able to know that you can handle X, Y, and Z. And it takes some practice and it takes some awareness to be able to learn how to start building this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think is an important piece, right? That we're scared of that awareness because we don't know what to do with it. And that's what we're here to talk about today, right? It's the tools to work with that emotion that comes up when. Like as a child, I didn't know what to do with my fear. Of course I didn't. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And it was probably more of an energetic fear rather than a real fear, right? Because why would a child be so scared of loss all the time, which is what my fear was, right? Why would a child be so scared of loss? We don't know. We could argue that. We could talk about that all day long. But sometimes we just need to acknowledge the emotion without making a story out of it.
Sure. And I think one of the things that is important for the audience to recognize is that there is so much truth in the fact that whatever stress we experience, it becomes part of our story. And so we need to learn how to deal with it when it happens, and adding these steps and these tools can give us that awareness to sort of offload that stress so that it doesn't become the thing that gets us stuck.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's a big part of self-care, right? So when I talk about self-care, we tend to think that self-care is this collection of perfect habits, right? Or it's the treat after we're exhausted and we need a bubble bath or a massage and things like that. Those are wonderful things. Those are wonderful self-care treats. But self-care is a fundamental relationship we have with ourselves every single day, where we are saying, how do I help myself survive what I'm going through and figure out a way that I can thrive as well?
Yeah. So today in our present world, I mean, you are training corporations, individuals, and you're showing them how to do this. Yes. So what do you want to talk to our audience at home about today to help them move forward this way?
I think the best thing to do today is talk about my AAA tool.
Okay.
You see it? AAA.
Yes.
Right. So it's simple. If you're in America, you know AAA from the, when your car is stuck on the side of the road, they come and help you out of the trouble. And so you can, and I give credit to that because I don't want somebody to come and say, hey, you stole our AAA. So I'm giving credits to them every single time. I don't want to stop talking about AAA. And so AAA is how we create more awareness and ask questions of ourselves about how we can get out of trouble. And trouble, I mean more that emotional stuckness that we feel when we don't know what to do about how we feel.
Okay.
So I call it power pausing, where we take that moment and ask inside, what do I need right now so that I can? And it's something that's a simple way that we can come into this place of kindness with ourselves, this place of listening and curiosity. So AAA is acknowledge how you feel, accept the circumstances for what they are, and then ask, what do I need so that I can?
Very interesting.
So an example, which AAA, the real AAA would come into effect, for example, is you break down on the road, right? You feel really anxious about it because it's late and, there's, traffic and so on and so forth. Let's just assume that, right? So you acknowledge how you feel. I'm really stressed out about this. I'm broken down on the side of the road, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So we're there. We have that tension in our bodies. And then we accept the circumstances for what they are, because if not, we can't get into action. Right. Sure. And we accept the fact, well, it's dark, I'm broken down, and we could start going into, oh my God, I should have done this. I should have gone the other way. I should have this. I should have checked my oil before I left. I should have checked my, whatever it is that we say. That's a waste of time. If we can't accept the situation for what it is, we're beating ourselves up over something.
Yeah.
That's not fair to beat ourselves up over. Accepting a situation for what it is how we reclaim our power. And then we can ask, what do I need so that I can? If it was the case of the real AAA, we would call AAA, right? Absolutely. And so, for example, if it's COVID, right, we might be really anxious about what's going on. Can we just accept the fact that we are in COVID? We're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
And we don't know when it's going to be over. I hear a lot of these conversations where we're really losing our power, where we're waiting to figure out how to take care of ourselves so that, and you hear that a lot, right? Well, I'm going to take care of myself better when COVID is over because then I can get back to the gym. Yeah. It's like, well, how can you take care of yourself now?
Yeah.
Right? And instead say, well, this situation, the way it is right now is I can't get to the gym. What are other ways that I can take care of myself right now? So I call self-care more of a mindset that leads to the habits that we tend to think of as self-care. Rather than feeling like that self-care is this idea of perfect habits that we have to fit into and do as a regime every day. Yes, we need routine, we need structure, we need rituals. But for us to get to those, we need AAA. We need to say, okay, this is how I feel right now. What do I need so that I can?
Yeah. You bring up such an important point, at least from my perspective, because when you have this moment of acceptance, you allow yourself to have control over the reaction to the situation. Yes. By literally recognizing the reality of the situation and then choosing. And it is this action of your choice that creates less uncertainty, which lowers our fear, which decreases our stress.
Yeah. And it's how we can reclaim our power.
Absolutely.
By acknowledging how we feel, we harness our humanity. We take back our humanity because we are feeling people. If we dismiss how we feel and think that we should just push through and confuse that with fearlessness and resilience, we're going to lose out. We're going to break. We're going to burn out.
Yeah.
That is not fearlessness and resilience.
Yeah.
Acknowledging how we feel and then accepting the circumstances for what they are, and then ask, what do I need so that I can? That's fearlessness and accepting the situation and resilience for adapting to what is.
Yeah.
That's how we create that agility.
I think this is so important. And I remember working on the unit with one of my doctor colleagues, and I asked her, I said, you seem better this week. How's it going? And she said, because she has 2 girls at home, she's a single mother, and during COVID was working on the unit, and, the kids were home without any parent, and they were young. Teenager was watching the adolescent, right? Because many people were in this situation. And she said, Well, one of the mothers that my children go to school with has decided to have a weekly Zoom meeting where we just check in and we talk. And she said, this ability to ask for help has been so empowering and not isolating in the way that like it had felt. And it fits into your model so perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if we can't talk about it, and that's also, you know, the mental health crisis is coming to the surface.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. Burnout isn't something new. It was just a completely silent crisis because nobody thought that they could, admit that they were burning out. It felt like a weakness. It's like, no, it's not a weakness that you're burning out. You're just being human. You've just been running without support for too long.
Yeah. We try to intellectualize, and then we don't feel, right?
Yeah. And it is important. Part of self-care is to have healthy boundaries. What do we say yes to? What do we say no to? But sometimes we just got to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how do we then keep going? What do we need so that we can keep going?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes that is what we have to do. But instead we tend to, if we just have to keep going, then we tend to completely throw self-care out the window.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, okay, I have to keep going, so I need even more self-care right now.
Yeah.
Which may be your meals, sleep, pauses, 5 minutes just to breathe.
I really love the way that you're putting this into perspective. To keep going, you have to keep adding self-care, because in this survival, this fight or flight mode, animals keep going. Human beings have the ability to intellectualize, to observe the emotions, to pay heed to the emotion and get themselves out of that, and then bring the cortisol level and the adrenaline levels back down to normal, right? And this is such an important distinction. And I feel like, I really love the simplicity of just AAA, because the truth is that, I don't know, it's the first letter of the alphabet and you say it 3 times and you figure it out, right? There's just so many pieces that people can use in times of crisis. And what I keep saying to people is, I keep saying, this is our reality. The post-pandemic world is our reality. This is a trauma, but our story doesn't have to be traumatic. It can be a moment of transformation. Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. You know, when I learned this when I was, and this pandemic has really brought this back to my memory, is like when I sat with my dad for 5 months waiting with him to die. Mm-hmm. Had I not accepted that situation, that he was dying and we just didn't know when, had I not accepted that situation, both he and I would have been suffering and struggling a lot more. Sure. But I also wouldn't have gotten the gifts from the conversations he and I had about life.
Yeah.
And all the things that we could cherish together, because we weren't pretending he wasn't dying.
Yeah.
We knew he was, and we made sure to talk about that every day.
Yeah.
And so as much as that sounds really heavy, it was also really beautiful. It was not easy, for sure. But if I couldn't accept the fact that he was dying, I would have lost out on the opportunity to get to know a person that I had lived many years with, but had yet to really, truly see and understand for the whole being that he was. Because those difficult conversations we could only have because we acknowledged how we both felt. Yeah. We accepted the situation for what it was. And every day we ask, what should we do today so that we figure out how to have a good day?
Yeah, that's exerting some choice and control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over a situation where I had no control.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we took control in little ways.
Yep.
Little tiny ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed us both. He could live and end his life empowered. Yeah. And I have never seen anybody wanting to learn till the end of his life. To the point that he did. He was curious. He wanted to learn, and he wanted to share, and he wanted to teach me until the end.
How wonderful.
Yeah. These are the conversations that if we can embrace and allow our emotions to be there, we become stronger, not weaker.
That's right. That's right. And I so appreciate your story and sharing this very, really personal piece with our audience because, I mean, we're just living, there's no question that we're living in such unprecedented times with high levels of uncertainty that's creating this fear. And I really hope that for the audience at home, you're hearing how these simple practices each day can really help you to regain some control. And again, understanding the way that we are talking here today about what it means to be resilient. Yeah. It means to ask for help, to accept, to be aware, right? And this is what will allow you to go forward. And I think this is such a powerful tool, and I really appreciate you sharing with us today. Yeah. Would you mind sharing your website with our audience so they can tune in and see what you're doing?
Sure. You can find a lot of articles and just information and resources on my blog website. It's not really a blog. It's a website with a lot of resources, but I call it my blog. It's pathforlife.com. Mm-hmm. And my website for my speaking and my coaching and my consulting, both with companies and individuals, and executive coaching and training as I do as well, is JeanetteBronée.com.
I love the way you say your name.
It's a French name, but I'm Danish, so it's a little funny. But it's another funny story how I have that name. But anyway, also I do have an online program that is on selfnourishment.pathforlife.com. But from pathforlife.com, you can go anywhere. Okay. You can find anything there. That's how you navigate around.
And for our audience at home, this is going to be published with the on-demand series that will be in your mailbox every Thursday. We'd like to thank Passionate World Talk Radio for providing this platform on their internet radio station for this show, Finding Your Holy Grail. For more information, please go to www.passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can select your subscriber preferences as well as receive this interview today on a number of podcast platforms, anything from Spotify to Amazon to Apple and so forth. And so thank you today for tuning in. Thank you to Jeanette for coming and joining us again. It's so lovely to see you again. And for everyone at home, until next week, keep safe and stay brave.